Hi everyone, my name is Megan and today we're going to be doing the rapid fire book tag. This tag is essentially just some basic this or that questions related to reading and books, and I thought this would be a pretty fun way for you guys to get to know me a little bit better since I'm still very new to BookTube. The first question is ebook or physical book. I definitely prefer physical books in general. I do read some ebooks on my phone through Libby, which I love, but I would definitely prefer to read a physical book rather than an ebook. Paperback or hardback? I'm gonna say paperback because I think I prefer to read from paperbacks. I just find paperbacks a lot more comfortable to hold than hardcovers, though I do really love the aesthetic look of a hardcover on a shelf. When it comes to reading, I prefer reading paperbacks. Online or in-person book shopping. I do both frequently and I love doing both, but I definitely prefer in-store shopping. There's something so satisfying about going to a bookstore and finding just the right book and taking it home with you and reading it right then. Obviously, online shopping is better in terms of selection, but I think ultimately I would prefer to buy a book from a brick and mortar store. Trilogies or series? Definitely trilogies. The less books in a series, the better. Next is heroes or villains? Definitely villains, 100%. Villains are just so much more fun to read. Next is a book that you want everyone to read. I'm going to say Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. I don't really have a super deep reason for this. I think this book is just so beautiful and perfect and such an incredible story. I just think that this would be a really great and powerful story for a lot of people, and I would love everyone to read this book. Next up is the last book that you finished. I just finished You Are Not Alone by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen last night. What is the last book that you bought? The most recent book that I purchased was Followers by Megan Angelo, and I'm very excited to get to this one. What's the weirdest thing you've used as a bookmark? I have once used a blood sugar testing strip unused as a bookmark. I have type 1 diabetes and that just happened to be the only thing that was lying around at the moment. I would definitely rather use the test strip than dog-ear the book, that is for sure. Used books, yes or no? Big yes for me. I'm all about used books. The cheaper I can get books, the better, and used books are typically cheaper than new books, so I'm all for it. Obviously, as long as they're in pretty decent condition and aren't super disgusting. What are your top 3 favorite genres? I've been thinking about my answer to this question for way too long, so I'm just going to say mystery thriller, literary fiction, which I know is a little general, but let's just go with it, and YA fantasy. Borrow or buy? I would say I prefer to buy a book when I can, just because I really love building up my own personal library and lending books to people. So I definitely prefer to buy, but I also love borrowing books from the library, especially if I'm feeling really unsure about how I'm going to like the book. I would prefer to borrow it. But in general, buy. Characters or plot? Obviously, both are very important, but I think that characters are definitely more important to me than plot. Long or short books? I would say preferably somewhere in between. I would say between the two, I prefer a book to be a little bit longer than a little bit shorter. Like a 350 to 400 page book is ideal, but a little bit longer than that's not too bad either. Long or short chapters? I love short chapters. I feel like in general, shorter chapters are better for the pace of a book. Obviously, some books need longer chapters than others, but I definitely prefer a book that has short chapters. Name the first 3 books you think of. All right, let's do this. The first book that I thought of was, oh my gosh, I cannot think of any books. The Grapes of Wrath. What a weird one for me to think of first, but okay. I'm Looking for Alaska and Queenie. Those are literally just what popped right into my head. Next is, what are some books that make you laugh or cry? I actually don't really cry in books at all. There are very few books in my life that have caused me to cry. Probably Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is the most notable one. I don't know, that this doesn't really feel like an original answer for me. So I'm gonna go with books that make me laugh, which is still pretty rare that I laugh out loud while reading a book, but it's less rare than crying. I promise that there will come a day where I will not talk about this book in one of my videos, but today is not that day. The book that made me laugh out loud the most of any book ever is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. The characters in this book had just pretty much exactly the same sense of humor that I have. And so this book really worked for me, and I definitely laughed out loud multiple times while reading it. Our world or fictional worlds? I think that maybe like 4 or 5 years ago I would have said our world is fine, let's just stay with our world, but now I'm gonna go with fictional worlds. It's fictional worlds. Audiobooks, yes or no? Audiobooks are tricky for me. I have to be in a really certain mood to listen to an audiobook, and I also have to be doing something to listen to an audiobook. So every now and then I'll listen to one in the car, or if I happen to be going to the gym, lol. But generally I don't really listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm much more of a visual person, so I think I just prefer the reading experience to audiobooks. Do you ever judge a book by its cover? Yeah, for sure, all the time. I definitely would never not read a book just because I didn't like its cover, but covers have definitely influenced me to pick up books that I might not have picked up if they didn't have such a striking cover. Also, this kind of ties back to one of the earlier questions, but I'm definitely more likely to buy a book that I'm interested in reading if it has a beautiful cover than borrow it from the library. Like, if a book has a really gross cover but I want to read it, I am much more likely to pick it up from the library than buy it for myself. I don't know, I just like having pretty books. But I'll read ugly books, don't get me wrong. Book to movie or book to TV show adaptation? Most of the time, definitely TV show, just because you're given so much more time to work with the book. But definitely some books, especially shorter books, should just stick to a movie. I honestly generally prefer TV to movie, so I would definitely rather watch a TV version of a book than a movie version of a book. What is a movie or TV show that you preferred to its book? I'm gonna go back in time just a little bit and say True Blood. I watched the first couple of episodes of the show and was obsessed with it and really wanted to try to read the Sookie Stackhouse series that the show is based off of, and it was basically all I could do to get through the first book. I just think that the TV show is a lot more engaging than the book series was. I will say that show definitely went downhill, but the first 3 seasons are classic. The last question of this tag is series or standalones? Definitely standalones. There are some stories that very obviously need to be told in a series for it to be fulfilling, but I find that most stories can honestly be fine as a standalone, and I would so much rather just read 1 longer book than 3 shorter books. Mostly because by the time the next book in the series comes out, I've already forgotten what happens in the first book, and then I feel like I have to reread the first book to remember what happened, and that just makes me less likely to bother with continuing with the series. So I definitely would just prefer if a story could just be one thing and wrap up and just end. Just please end. All right, everyone, that was the rapid fire book tag. Like I said, if you are a booktuber and you haven't done this tag, you definitely should, and I will leave the questions in my description box. Also in my description box, you will find links to all of the books that I mentioned in today's video, as well as a link to my Goodreads page if you would like to add me. I make videos every Tuesday and Friday, but if you're interested in following me throughout the rest of the week, you can find me on Instagram at Megan Likes Books and on Twitter at Meg Likes Books. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Leave me a comment and let me know some of your answers to these questions below. I would love to talk about them with you. I will see you guys very soon for another video. Bye-bye.